Good evening to everyone listening to this evening. This is the Monday night program from the Buddhist Society of Victoria, and we are live streaming it from Newbury Buddhist Monastery. So, as usual with the program this evening, we will have comments, questions or complaints, and you can make those on the YouTube live chat that's part of the live streaming. And also, just to let you know, the format, it's the usual format we follow, which is an introduction, the actual guided meditation, followed by questions, comments, questions and complaints, as I often say. And I'd like to introduce myself for those who don't know me, and of course you'll see the picture, some people will know. And my name is Ajahn Nissarano, and I've been a fully ordained Buddhist monk for, this will be my 23rd rains retreat. We have the 3-month rains retreat every year. And I was ordained by Ajahn Brahm in Perth in 1998. And for 14 years I have been living in Sri Lanka, and for 8 of those in a cave in the forest, which was a very nice experience. And now I am here spending the rains retreat at the Newbury Buddhist Monastery in the recently constructed monk section. So this evening I'd like to start with the introduction to the guided meditation. The theme, I always like a theme for the meditation, and the theme this evening will be bringing the feeling of peace and the sacred, or the sacred's okay, into our meditation and lives. So that's bringing the feeling of peace and the sacred into our meditation and lives. I often emphasize for the meditation that if we can bring up a feeling, a positive, wholesome feeling, and use it with the meditation, it is a great support, because these feelings, they attract the mind. They keep the mind interested in the present moment. They keep the mind interested in the breath. So this can be a skillful means for supporting the meditation, and also becoming a way of bringing up these emotional qualities for us at other times too in our lives when we need them. So as I said, this will be bringing up the feeling of peace and the sacred into our meditation and lives. Often with meditation, of course, peace can develop out of the meditation, and that will often be the experience as the meditation goes deeper. And once that happens, of course, the support we're using, we don't need, because this has come up, and it will develop, and it will bring with it, as the meditation develops, it brings with it a sense of joy and happiness, and the mind coming together. We call it samadhi. So I'd like to read a text that I think gives a feeling of peace to me, and it points out the different types of peace, really. There's the peace, of course, we can develop in meditation, and we can be at peace with situations in our lives, so that even though it may be a busy situation, we still have this sort of inner sense of peace amidst whatever we're experiencing. So they're very, very useful. It's a very useful thing to develop in our lives. And that peace that we experience in meditation, we can use it as that basis for the mind being peaceful in the midst of our lives, what's happening. So this text, and there will probably be texts that you find yourself that bring up peace for you. This is one way of bringing up a feeling of peace. There are many ways, and I'm going to talk briefly about them. And whichever way brings up that feeling of peace, of steadiness, stillness in the mind, calm in the mind, this is useful for the meditation. And when we bring up these positive emotions, they deal with or reduce the the defilements, the hindrances to our meditation. So this is the text. I think many people will recognize this. It's from the Desiderata, which is a famous poem that many people know. It used to decorate the toilet wall of my mother's home, so that's where I first came across it. It's very 1970s or 80s. So this is how it goes, not the whole of it. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. So that's the text that I find when I, just that opening line, particularly go placidly amid the noise and haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. That brings up a feeling of peace for me, actually. And so this text may do that for you, but other texts may as well. And later I will talk about the classic recollection of peace that the Buddha taught as well, which is the recollection of Nibbana. That's I'll just mention it briefly, but this is one text one can use. And so this bringing up of peace, I think, is very like what they call quiet time in schools, don't they? And I think quiet time is essential for our lives so that we can calm down, we can get in contact with what's going on within ourselves. And this is what the meditation is aiming to do. Twofold, it brings this calm, this peace, and with it clarity, so that we can see things more clearly. And in order to do this, as I said, we can use inspirational texts, and maybe you'll find that Desiderata inspiring, maybe not. But we can also remember, and I'll go into this in more detail, there are people we often associate with peace. Sometimes we'll meet somebody who has got a really peaceful quality about them, and we can, as it were, pick up on that peace. And sometimes there are places that bring up peace for us too, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Or there can be things, objects that bring up peace for us, that give rise to this feeling. And when the mind takes on this peaceful association, it colours whatever we experience. And as I mentioned, we can infuse it with a meditation object and give it this peaceful flavour. And as I say, once the meditation starts to take off by itself, that peace will come up even more so. And so many places, I'll start with the places that can bring up peace for us. And for some, it can be like churches. I've heard and I've seen churches in Britain and in Europe, very ancient, old churches, medieval churches, and they do have this feeling of peace and this sort of special quality about them. And of course, in a Buddhist context, we can find monasteries, meditation centres. And here, for instance, at the Newbury Buddhist Monastery, I can feel, as time's gone by, that it's become more and more peaceful. And for me, when I sit here in the meditation hall here, I can feel this peace, and it becomes associated with peace. So, and also very well-known place is Bodhinyana Monastery, Ajahn Brahm's monastery. Many people say that's got an incredibly strong, peaceful feeling for them, and I think so too. And part of that can be that there have been many meditators there, and the lifestyle of the monks living there too. It's a very peaceful one. And when we go to these places, they can help our meditation, they can deepen it, and we can sit longer. I also find, because I've lived in Sri Lanka for quite a while, that when I see temples in Sri Lanka, these they're beautiful whitewashed temples with walls around them and sand around a Bodhi tree. This is a tree the Buddha became enlightened under. And when you just see them, they give this quality of peacefulness to my mind. It's an association that I have, and it calms the mind. And you see people that often go to the monasteries when they're in times of difficulty to connect with some of that peace when they're feeling turbulence or turmoil in their lives. And I know for my last rains retreat in Sri Lanka, 2019, I stayed in a monastery in the mountains, and just seeing the mountain that I could see from my hut, from the walking path in front of the hut as well, and just seeing that solidity, that seeing the clouds coming and going, but that steadiness and that the way it was unaffected by the change in weather and the change in light, I could use in my meditation to bring up that feeling of steadiness and stillness, of peace. And it reminds me very much of, you might connect with this text actually, what the Buddha's, some of the advice that the Buddha gave to his son, the Venerable Rahula, about meditation. And I think this is lovely actually. To me it brings up this sort of peace, sense of equanimity. And he said to his son, Rahula, develop meditation that is like the earth. For when you develop meditation that is like the earth, arisen agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. Just as people throw clean things and dirty things, excrement, urine, spittle, pus and blood on the earth, and the earth is not repelled, humiliated and disgusted because of that, so too, Rahula, develop meditation that is like the earth. For when you develop meditation that is like the earth, arisen agreeable and disagreeable contacts will not invade your mind and remain. So it's a bit like the mountain for me in Sri Lanka. And this brings up a piece of, a sense of peace, yes, and a sense of we say imperturbability, like unshakableness, as the mountain does too, this steadiness and equanimity. For some people, a very, very good way to bring up peace is to remember to visualize sitting or walking in nature, being in the bush, being in the forest, seeing the trees, the forest, pools, lakes. All this can be very, and sometimes seeing a vista, seeing a panorama, can bring up this sense of peace in the mind. So when we are meditating, this power of visualization, using the imagination, can be used to be wherever you wish to be, that brings up that feeling. You can be here at Newbury Monastery if you know the place, or some other place that brings up that feeling, or in nature. And also you may remember some people who are very peaceful, and you can pick up on this quality and remember it and bring it inside. This is one of the things that we can experience with other people. You can call them spiritual friends in a sense, that we can see qualities that they have, and we can, as it were, they can become a role model for that quality, and we can pick up on it. And I mentioned another category of things is sometimes when we see things like a Buddhist statue, for instance, very peaceful and calm, and that can bring up a quality of peace in the mind. And I see often when I go for my walks in Melbourne, I see many Buddhist statues in the gardens. And I'm sure many of these people are not Buddhists, but they connect, I think, with that sense of peace. So just to bring to mind a very peaceful Buddha statue can be very, very useful. So, and I mentioned the classic recollection of peace that the Buddha taught. And this is really something for Buddhists that have contemplated the path and that they can appreciate some of the qualities that the Buddha described about Nibbana. And this is one of the reflections. I might just in a minute read some descriptions of Nibbana. They call them epithets, but they're descriptions. Whatever states there are, bhikkhus, whether conditioned or unconditioned, of these detachment is reckoned foremost. This is not being attached. That is the subduing of vanity, like subduing of the self or conceit of self. The elimination of thirst, this is craving. The removal of reliance, this is sticking to sense pleasures and other things. The termination of the round of rebirths and the destruction of craving, detachment, cessation, nibbana. Then he says, the Buddha says, those who have faith in the Dhamma of detachment have faith in the foremost, and for those with faith in the foremost, the result will be foremost. And so I'll just mention a few qualities in Nibbana, and for those who, because when I gave this guided meditation before, somebody asked me about the qualities of Nibbana. I have a whole list of them, but I'll just read the ones that are about the state of peace. These are the like condensed descriptions the Buddha gave of Nibbana. So for those who wish to contemplate Nibbana to bring up peace, and the Buddha described it as the highest peace, and he called it the Santipada, the tranquil state. Also called it the supreme state of sublime peace. And of course the famous one, the calming of all activities. And he called it upasama, tranquility. He called it the uncrowded, the asambada badha, and the undisturbed, the untroubled, and that which is without rival. He called it serenity, and he called it non-exertion. This is like rest. So that's just the ones about peace. This is a couple of pages of the descriptions of Nibbana, so it's very, very inspiring. So I'd encourage you to use, during this guided meditation at the beginning, one of these things that brings up that sense of peace for you, whether it be the inspirational texts, contemplating Nibbana, Desiderata, or even the advice of the Buddha to Venerable Rahula, whether it be people, somebody that you know has really got a peaceful feel to them, or places, whether it be a natural place, whether it be a building, a place like a monastery or a meditation center, or things like the Buddha statue, whatever can bring up this feeling of peace for you. This is a skillful means to support the meditation. So now we can begin the guided meditation. So firstly we can find a comfortable posture, however you find comfortable, and that gives some alertness to the body. Not stiffness, not tension. We don't need that at all. But some like an alert posture, sitting, standing, walking, or lying down even. And we can close the eyes and let go of the past which has happened and the future, just to be here now. And to allow our minds to be with the body, to be here in the present moment. And there's nothing we need to do, There's nowhere we need to go for this roughly 45 minutes. And so we can just arrange the body or make ourselves more comfortable. Check that the head feels balanced over the shoulders. The shoulders feel comfortable, relaxed. And the shoulders balanced over the hips. And the legs feel comfortable. They're in a comfortable position for you. Just checking out our posture. And now we can mentally relax the body. This is quite an important part of the meditation and very effective. Starting at the top of the head and the sides and the back of the head, and giving this feeling of kindness, this kind attention, this warm attention, what I call a mental massage to the top of the head, back of the head and sides of the head. Allowing this area to relax, calming it down. Now bringing to mind the forehead and relaxing that, soothing that. Allowing some of the creases to dissolve, to relax. And moving the attention down to around the eyes, soothing them, giving this warm attention to the eyes. And relaxing the cheeks of the face and around the lips, around the mouth. Soothing with this kind attention, relaxing attention. And moving down to the neck, all around the neck, giving it the mental massage. Bringing to mind the right shoulder, starting at the neck and moving our attention along the right shoulder, soothing it, relaxing it, allowing it to let go of tensions, any hardness. Now bringing to mind the right arm, starting at the top of the right arm, and as we gradually move our attention down the right arm to take in the elbow, the wrist, the hand and the fingers, soothing, relaxing, calming. And now we can bring to mind the left shoulder, starting at the neck and moving along the left shoulder, relaxing it, giving it this warm attention, dissolving any tension, soothing any pain. calming the left shoulder. Now bringing to mind the left arm, starting at the top of the left arm, and as we gradually move our attention down the left arm, to take in the elbow, the wrist, the hand and fingers, soothing them with this mental massage. Now bringing the back to mind, starting below the shoulders and moving our attention slowly down the back, right down to the buttocks, relaxing them, soothing them, giving this warm, kind attention, and especially to any painful areas, any tight areas, just giving them a good soothe, a mental massage. And now we can bring our attention to the front of the body, just below the shoulders. As we gradually move our attention down the front of the body, we can include the chest, the diaphragm, the stomach and abdomen areas, soothing them, relaxing them. Any areas that there's tension or pressure or pain, just soothing them with this kind, relaxing attention. And now we can bring to mind the right leg, starting at the top of the right leg and moving our attention down the right leg to include the knee, ankle, foot and toes of the right leg, soothing them, relaxing them, giving them a mental massage. And now bringing to mind the left leg, starting at the top of the left leg, and as we gradually move our attention down the leg, to take in the knee, the ankle, foot and toes, giving them this relaxing, kind, warm attention. And now we can bring to mind the whole body, being aware of how it feels. Sitting or standing or lying down, how it feels, the body. Just simply being here. No past, no future to define us. On holiday in the present moment. And we can develop the intention to bring up a feeling of peace in the mind. And we can visualize or bring to mind a place. Maybe it's a monastery, a meditation center. Maybe it's a place in nature, somewhere far from the hustle and bustle. Maybe it's a mountain, a forest, or a still lake, a stream. Or we can think of a Buddha statue, a peaceful Buddha statue that we have seen that has a calming, peaceful effect on us. Or we can think of a person or some text, some writing that brings up this peaceful feeling, whatever one we wish to use. can get in contact with that feeling that we arouse by bringing to mind somewhere, someone, or something that brings up peace for us. That steadiness, stillness of peace. And we can bring that peace into the experience of the present moment. That peace with whatever we're experiencing, sounds, feelings in the body, the temperature of the room, whatever it is, from moment to moment, this present moment, our home. And when we become aware of the breath, we can give our attention to the breath coming in and going out, noticing the most prominent area that we're aware of the breath, wherever it be, and using that as a reference point as we breathe in and we breathe out. And breathing in this feeling of peace and breathing out this feeling of peace. And if this feeling of peace diminishes, we can bring up the visualization, whatever it was, a place, a person, a thing, a text, whatever we used to refresh it. Breathing in this feeling of peace and breathing out this feeling of peace to the world. And now we can recollect that feeling of peace, bring it to mind, and to expand this feeling of peace to include everyone wherever you are, whether they people or animals, birds, and to all those who are listening to this live streaming, sharing this sense of peace, steadiness and stillness. And we can expand this feeling of peace, this gift of peace, to all those living in the area around where we are at the moment, including the animals, all beings, giving them this gift of peace. Of stillness, steadiness. And expanding it in ever widening circles. Ever widening circles to cover the whole of the earth and all realms of existence. Giving this gift of peace, calm, stillness, steadiness. And now we can return to ourselves and bring this sense of peace and anchor it in our hearts so that we can remember it any time of day or night. And we can make an aspiration, an intention to develop more this feeling of peace, more and more. To make it a refuge for ourselves and to make it a gift for others. And before we finish, we can just recollect how the meditation was. How do I feel now? Did I experience a feeling of peace during the meditation? And did that feeling change, come and go? And lastly, what caused this feeling that I experienced to arise? And now we can slowly come out of the meditation, slowly open the eyes and move the body to make it more comfortable. So I hope that you experienced some of this peace and found that it took you deeper into the meditation. And I'd just like to mention before we have the comments or questions or complaints, other ways we can develop this feeling of peace. And one of the very important things to do is to have a meditation space or room in our homes dedicated to this purpose. Because we find when we have a place that we use regularly, it becomes associated with that feeling of peace, with quiet time, of meditation. And so it can reinforce, it brings up that association whenever we go to that space, whether it be part of a room or a separate room. So this can be very useful. And another thing that is very supportive, I used to like this very much, was having quiet days. Days when you just meditate, relax, and walk in nature. Have a day, in the park and take something to eat and just to walk and have time with yourself. Maybe read some spiritual texts and meditate in nature. Nature has this incredibly calming and relaxing effect on the mind, healing effect on the mind. And another thing that supports bringing up this sense of peace in our lives is not rushing. Rushing is a good way to destroy it very quickly. Allowing enough time to do what we need to do without rushing. We tend to, I see it myself, cut things very finely so that we may end up feeling like rushed, because having this rushed state of mind is really the opposite of developing peace. And doing things slowly and mindfully is always very useful. And I recall, as I often mention, a friend of mine who said, for her, she said, Tai Chi is just too slow. But I think it's good if we can slow down, because I notice that when I slow down, the mind tends to slow down. When the mind slows down, it becomes more peaceful, more relaxed. And of course, a very good support for developing peace and deepening the meditation is going on retreats regularly. And these days, there are quite a few retreats available even online, and they can be very useful. There is something about actually going to another location which is very useful too, which is not our familiar location. And that can have a very good effect when we go on retreats. And they're usually, in a natural setting. And lastly, one very useful thing, and it will bring, I think, instant peace, is turning off our phones, turning off our tabs, our iPads and our computers. And that can be very freeing when we're not tethered to our devices. We use them, but sometimes I wonder if they're using us. So that can bring a sense of peace and space in our lives. Of course, we can turn them on at any time, but just to have periods when we turn it off, very good. When, as one conference was, to connect by disconnecting, connect with ourselves by disconnecting from the internet. So they're just some suggestions. So now I'd just like to see if there are any comments, questions or complaints. Chin, look, are there some there?
Venerable,
Yes.
how much time is required to master each meditation suggested by Buddha?
Ah, right.
Maybe the listener could be referring to meditation type.
Well,
Because there's a follow-on question as well. Should I read that now? To give you some clarity.
Yes, maybe it adds to
The
it.
follow-on question is, can each and every meditation lead the mind to Nibbana, or only Anapana, but I think it means Anapanasati,
right.
leads the mind to Nibbana?
Right, no. Of course, the Buddha taught 40 different meditation techniques, and we can use any of those for meditation to take us deeper and deeper. And many of them can be used to take a Nibbana. It's not only the breath. The breath, of course, is something that the Buddha practiced himself and encouraged. And it's certainly a meditation object that, having tried a few different techniques myself, I appreciate more and more, because it is something that lends itself to combining with a feeling, but is sort of a gentle, a calming experience that is very, very useful. But there are many different ways to meditate, and we don't have to answer your first part of that question, we don't have to master every different meditation technique. Not everyone will gel with us, not everyone will work for us, every meditation technique. So it's good to find what works for us. And what do I mean by works for us? I mean, it brings more peace, more stillness, more calm, but also insight and wisdom, because insight and wisdom is usually a product of developing clarity, steadiness, stillness in the mind, so that we can see things much more clearly than we usually do with a busy mind that moves all about the place. So you needn't develop all 40 techniques, but just develop what is necessary for yourself. I mentioned the Buddha's advice to his son Rahula. In that sutta, is quite interesting. He mentions at least half a dozen different meditations to develop, including, the metta meditation, what we call loving kindness or friendliness. And I think there was also some asubha meditation, focusing on the unattractive quality of the body to free the mind from its infatuation and focusing on the body. So there are many, many different techniques, but whatever works for you. And this is what one of my teachers, Ajahn Kema, said: the right technique is the one that works for you, that brings more peace, more calm, stillness, more insight, and more wisdom. So that's the right technique. So thank you very much for that question.
Thank you for the talk. what do we do when we are trying to develop peacefulness in the meditation when we enter more euphoric states? I have noticed these states can have an agitated quality.
Ah, right. Yes, yes. Yeah, when we meditate, the mind can go through more energetic experiences. You know, we call this they call it piti or joy in the and it can be experienced very bodily. You know, like waves of energy going through the body and so forth. And of course, you know, this is quite a strong experience, but with paying attention to it, with calm, paying attention to it really, not interfering with it, it will gradually calm down and then develop into what the Buddha called passaddhi. This is more like tranquility of the body, where these sensations and mind, where these sensations are much, much more refined. And then developing from that, when the body becomes tranquil, it gets this feeling of detachment from the five senses. Then the mind becomes happy, we call it sukha, and then the mind can develop samadhi, coming together, and then it can develop, after it comes out of that state, seeing things as they really are, yata bhuta, jnanadasana. So there can be a sense of, particularly with this piti, a sense of, I don't know if I describe it as agitation, but it is energy, and some of it sometimes very, sort of coarse energy, it feels like it, waves of it through the body, but it can also be much, much more refined and will calm down with time. So, yes, it's a very high energy experience, so it may not be so peaceful, but it will change into this, gradually into this tranquility, and when that tranquility comes, there's this happiness. Because I noticed when I was doing that meditation that there's a sense of happiness comes from it, actually, because the mind is steady. It's a very pleasant experience to have this experience of peace. And then when samadhi develops, when the mind comes together, this is a very joyful, alive experience, but also incredibly peaceful. Strange to say that, isn't it? Very peaceful experience. So, and that peace will deepen, with the development of deeper meditations. So I hope that answered your question. Just be patient. That agitation, that excessive energy will calm down. But particularly we shouldn't, have an aversion to it, because that will, of course, derail that experience altogether. If we resist it, we just allow it to calm down. Thanks, Jinlok.
Ajahn, could you please expound a moment on going slow?
Oh, right, I'm going slow. Yes. Well, as I was saying, when we slow down our movements, when we do things very mindfully and slowly, it calms the mind. And though I've never done Tai Chi, when even just watching it is quite peaceful, actually. So I imagine the experience must be even more so. So that when we move the body slowly, it tends to influence the mind, and the mind will slow down, agitation will reduce, and so whatever we do in a slow and mindful way will have an effect on the body as well. But we need that mindfulness to be with it too. I think it was Ajahn Chah said there are plenty of drivers who drive slowly and have accidents, something like that. So, yes, so slowing down, and it's the opposite of what we see in modern life. When I go sometimes in Melbourne, I go on the alms round and down to the shops, and I see people in such a hurry. They seem to be hurrying. I think some of it is exercise, but some of it looks just like hurry. And it makes me feel like slow down even more, because I feel, that for these people, just to see somebody who is slowed down, that hopefully is a little bit more peaceful, is calming for them. And so that's something that I feel for the pace of modern life, slowing down is very, very useful. And it reminds me of a person who went to a monastery in Myanmar, and there they slowed everything down, and his mind was so pacey that it was incredible suffering for him to be there, and he really resisted it. And I don't think he actually ever, really took to that practice, or perhaps understood the purpose of it. But slowing down, and what happens, you notice this, say with walking meditation, when the mind starts to calm down, when there's some of that agitation reduces, the walking will slow down, the pace will slow down naturally. And it is best, to go at a natural pace and allow that tendency for the mind to become stiller and stiller to reduce, and then the pace will reduce by itself quite naturally. So this is a real antidote to our rather souped up lives that we have. So I hope that was of interest to the person. Perhaps.
Next question. Dear Ajahn, I have noticed that using various skillful means in meditation to bring up peace sometimes lead to a subtle sense of striving to increase the level of peacefulness.
Yeah.
Can you please discuss on how to deal with this one in one's practice?
Yeah, yes. Oh, that's interesting. Yes. One, it's a sense of dissatisfaction with what one's experiencing at the moment and wanting to develop it, to make it go further. And of course, the more we want, we bring up wanting, desire, the further away the peace will become. We're trying to control it. But if we can be content, this is what Ajahn Brahm always advises, and I see it in my own practice. When we can be content with what we're experiencing now, it will naturally deepen. It will naturally become more peaceful, more pleasant, because we're not, as Ajahn Brahm says, not going on to another stage. We're going deeper into the experience of now, what we're experiencing now. And that will settle, become more peaceful, more still, more pleasant, if we can do that. So it's just letting go of that wanting, what next, or what more, wanting more. So that would be the advice I can give with that. And it will naturally get more peaceful that way. So good luck with that. Being content is not easy, because it's not our habitual training in life, because life and modern society is training us, is conditioning us to be discontent with things. So when we're becoming, because we can improve on them, we can get more, we can get better, etc. But when we become content, actually we find the reverse happens, and we can get stiller, more peaceful, and more happy, actually. Because contentment is another word for happiness. So, and as Ajahn Brahm says, happiness or contentment is not having what you like, it's liking what you already have. So that's a nice way of putting it. So I hope that helps. Yeah, good. Any other questions?
How much time is required to master any meditation suggested by Buddha?
Oh, right.
I think this ties back to the
first ones. Yes. Well, that will depend on, whether it's an appropriate meditation for you. Some meditations you'll take to very quickly, and you may find that they work for you very well. So the length of time that it takes, the most important thing actually with meditation is just consistency, doing it regularly, not once in a while, but every day, and if possible, a number of times a day is good, isn't it? So that's much more important. And then it's creating a habit in the mind, a conditioning in the mind, and that, will take one deeper and deeper. So there isn't a set time for developing these things, and often when we set a time, we want to. It's in a sense we're making demands. We may be in a hurry, which is really the opposite of what meditation is about, because hopefully we can let go to a certain extent of our preoccupations with time and achieving results as quickly as possible, because this won't actually help the mind settle down. And it's part of a mind that's trying to get more and more experience. It's a mind that's wanting. It's a mind that's getting. So it will take its own time. And if we do it regularly, that's the important thing, a repetition. And the mind will get into that groove, will get into... And each time we repeat, it can become deeper and deeper. It'll take us further, into more peaceful states, more clear states of mind. So it will take its own time. Yeah. Thank you very much, Chinlook. Is that it?
Yeah, that was the last question.
Last question. So thank you to everyone who has been participating in this live streaming this evening. I hope you found some peace in it. And of course, I remember one time when I was teaching this and somebody pointed out, and I alluded to it, there are two types of peace. We can develop the peace in the meditation, and the second type is developing peace in our experience of life. So it's taking that peace that we've experienced, we've got a taste for in the meditation, and taking it into life. Sometimes when people develop peace, they can, as it were, have a resistance to anything that seems to impact on that peace or reduce that peace. But if we can be at peace with what we're experiencing, it may not be what we like, actually, or it can give us a sort of a stillness and peace even in daily life. And I think this is what Ajahn Chah meant when he created this saying of still water flowing. So the still water is the mind that's still, that's peaceful, and the water is the circumstances of life. We can really suffer if we are not at peace with where we're at in life, what we're experiencing, rejecting what we don't like. But we can be at peace with it too, and that is a far, far preferable thing. So important to take the peace of samadhi into the peace in life. And that's the peace of wisdom, really, isn't it? The peace of wisdom is not fighting with the conditions we experience in life. Just we do what we can in terms of change if they're unpleasant, but we can be at peace with them. And both these sources of peace are very, very important. So I hope that was useful for you this evening, and may you develop both types of peace, the portable peace and the peace of samadhi. So now we can finish off by paying respects to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha if you wish. And I'll do the chanting because you can't see me bowing, so I can't bow. So please join if you wish, if you know this chant. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Swagato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So thank you for participating this evening.